Welcome to our Cork Unitarian Church Sunday service. We have been noticing some quality and technical problems lately with our Facebook Live Sunday broadcasts. As a result, we're trying out a new format using pre-recording. In that same light, we're also adapting the content of our broadcast from being a full online service to becoming something more focused, a service which we're calling simply Sunday Thoughts. Today's Sunday Thought has to do with the season of Advent. Our term Advent is traditionally associated with the 4-week period of time prior to the celebration of the Christmas holiday. Our word Advent is derived from the Latin adventus, meaning arrival. It's a combination of two Latin words, ad, meaning to, and venire, meaning come. In typical usage, the word Advent indicates a period of anticipation before something happens. And that period of anticipation is often accompanied by a period of preparation. This mix of anticipation and preparation is not unique to the run-up to Christmas. For example, long before electric lights and television, early people were keen observers of the sky. They understood well the rhythm of life and death. So it did not escape the attention of people living in the Northern Hemisphere that there were progressively less daylight hours as fall passed into winter. The winter solstice must have been a tremendously reassuring relief when the trend changed and the days began getting longer. Nowadays, we can see a marvelous anthropological indication of the importance of that phenomena right here in Ireland at Newgrange, which was constructed during the Neolithic period, about 3200 BC. It's not a coincidence that the setting of the date for commemorating Christmas in the Western Julian and Gregorian calendars coincides with the winter solstice. This conflation of Christmas's date with the natural phenomenon of winter solstice helps to accentuate the religious meaning of the holiday. In Christian tradition, there have been different focuses on the anticipation and preparation when it comes to Advent and Christmas. Only 2 of the 4 gospel accounts actually have Advent stories. These are the gospel accounts traditionally attributed to Matthew and Luke. Now, the scholarly consensus is that these Gospels are definitely not first-hand accounts, and probably not so much even second-hand accounts as they are third or later-hand accounts. However, when the Advent accounts in these Gospels are read side by side, we can see very different stories. The differences sometimes appear to be complementary, and sometimes they appear to be quite divergent. However, when we read each gospel as originally intended, that is, start to finish, then we see something interesting emerge in the respective Advent stories. The Advent stories in the Gospels set the reader up with anticipation and preparation for what will happen later on in the gospel text. Let's take an example. One thing about Matthew's gospel is that Matthew is fascinated with this idea of messianic prophecy. So much so that Matthew often appears, at least to us modern readers, to take liberties or cherry-pick Old Testament verses somewhat out of context. However, in his version of the Advent story, one thing that Matthew does is to bring in prophetic indications about Jesus as the awaited Messiah, setting the stage for what Matthew will develop in later chapters of his gospel. Likewise, Luke's gospel has many elements because he takes a different approach to the Advent story. In Luke's gospel, Luke makes the point that Jesus is not to be thought of as John the Baptist's disciple, and thereby maybe imply that Jesus was in any way John's junior. So, in his Advent story, Luke prepares us with the notion that John the Baptist is a herald coming prior to Jesus, and leads us to wonder how that will materialize later on in John's gospel story. A lot of Christian tradition around Advent, however, actually comes from a later apocryphal story called the Proto-Gospel of James. It was written about a century after Matthew and Luke's Gospels were written, and this Advent story combines and greatly expands elements from the Matthew and Luke accounts. It expands them by adding elaborate and often fanciful backstories of Mary and Joseph. While it was never accepted into the New Testament, these stories had great influence on early Christians and both reflected the what they believed and also helped shape what they believe. So in a sense, it shaped early Christian theology, and it is a record of what early Christians were thinking about theologically. Now, one minor note is that this particular unofficial gospel appears to be the source which popularized the idea that the nativity scene is set in a cave or grotto. And I don't want to forget that some 600 years after the Advent described by Matthew and Luke, we see another version of the same story. This one appears in the Book of Maryam in the Muslim Quran. In this version, the anticipation and preparation centers around the introducing the angel Gabriel's announcement to Mary. This is done as a foreshadowing of Gabriel's later role in dictating the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. Jesus, in this Muslim gospel, his special foreshadowing is that he has this unique conception by God, and this indicates his future role as a great prophet because, like Adam, Jesus was created directly by the power of God, not through the normal birth and conception process of the rest of us. As the centuries passed, many traditions, customs, and devotions came to be associated with the official celebration of the Christmas Advent. Some of these were religiously inspired activities like prayer and fasting and almsgiving. I know here in Cork we still see a lot of charitable collections going on in city center and the shopping periods during Advent. So some of these things are still very much a part of the celebration today. Other things were not specific activities as such. Rather, they are aspirational but elusive themes which permeate things, such as hope, love, joy, and peace. Now, for some people, all of this is very irrelevant. They have no interest in either the Christmas Advent or even in commemorating, say, the winter solstice. For others, perhaps they are interested in Christmas Advent, but primarily as a reenactment celebration of a historical event. I would not fall into either of these camps, yet people in either of those camps might be interested in find some value in my perspective. My personal take is that it is more important considerations are for each of us to understand what is our own personal Advent and understand what each of us is waiting for with a mix of anticipation and preparation. Now, we do have the option of using the traditional stories and practices from Advent as inspiration and stepping off points. and then come back and use that to focus on our own personal stories and experiences. Maybe you're approaching or going towards a major life change, and you are experiencing Advent in relation to that upcoming change. Or maybe you're just facing the annual social, financial, and emotional challenges that sometimes come with the approach of the Christmas holiday. Even if the holiday is, for you, simply a family celebration. In any case, it is possible to claim your own personal Advent by acknowledging your own sense of anticipation and realistically managing appropriate preparations. So whatever your personal Advent situation is, I hope and pray that you are able to embrace it and become more blessed by your experience. I hope you have enjoyed our Sunday Thoughts talk today, and I wish you all peace and blessings.